I'm one of those crazy people that enjoys taking a game and making it even more challenging than it should be. It can be any game, but survival games tend to be the ones that stick because there's just so many different ways that you can challenge yourself, so many restrictions that you can put on your playthrough. Now, in the case of Vintage Story, the devs have really intended for the player to live in temperate or slightly warmer or slightly colder biomes. They don't really think that you're going to go outside the box that much. And I've been trying to break that recently. I've survived the desert, I've survived the Arctic, I've even modded slightly to survive a world in the sky. But there's always one location in every survival game that's at least based off of a somewhat Earth-like planet that I love to try to survive in, and that is a cave. But in the case of Vintage Story, the devs don't really intend for you to try to live your life in a cave. They give you some ruins, and they give you some different kinds of metals and rocks in caves that are enticing enough for you to explore them. They don't intend for you to try to live in a cave. So that's exactly why I'm doing this challenge today. Now, in order to make this playthrough not just RNG hell, but instead actually something that you can work with and build off of, I have added one mod to this world that essentially turns the entire world into a giant cave, and that is Starless Skies. Starless Skies does exactly what it sounds like. It removes everything from the sky. There's no sun, there's no moon, there are no stars, there's nothing to guide you. There will never be natural light. There is only darkness at all times. It's essentially what would happen if you wanted to play the game, but it was only ever nighttime. Except for the fact that it treats everything more like a cave. Enemies can spawn anywhere, with or without rifts. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, that doesn't seem too bad. I mean, you just have a light source, and you run around with light sources all the time, and put down some torches or whatever. It's a little bit more complicated than that. And if you really want to see why, join me on this journey, because trust me, this is one of the most frustrating runs I have ever done. As always, let's start with the world settings and character class. In this one, I'm choosing Clockmaker because it's the only one I haven't done other than the Commoner. And Clockmaker, well, it's definitely not the strongest candidate for a challenge like this one. Its stats are not that great, especially when you think about frail and nervous and how that's going to affect my survivability in the very beginning of this. Now, I think I was kind of riding the high of the desert challenge and how easy that was, so for this world, I really wanted to try to do wilderness survival settings with the 5,000 block respawn radius and dropping items on death. I wanted to turn on the map so that I could go get my items, but aside from that, really wanted that challenge to be there. But as I was live streaming this, anybody who was there that night saw it's a really difficult world. Like, I couldn't really make any progress because by the time I was able to get a torch, I basically would die, drop the torch, and then spend all my time making another torch. And every time I died, I had to try to run and go get my stuff, and if I didn't mark on my map where I died previously, I'd lose that stuff too. The best way I can put it is that spawns are chaotic. I spent a good while trying to get established in a world. Sometimes I would spawn and I would get a campfire and a torch going, and then I would die shortly after. Sometimes I would die before I even got to the part where I had a torch. And yeah, I kind of forgot that you could light torches on fire with a fire starter because I almost never do that. But yeah, I mean, I don't think that would have saved that much time, really. It's just a difficult world. And even once you do have a torch and you start running around, it's not any easier. Enemies spawning everywhere means shivers that are faster than you will come up and bite you. Bow-torn, you won't even hear and they'll shoot you. And then drifters, you know, they're perfectly accurate, throwing rocks all the time. I don't have footage of that first night, but repeated deaths on and on and on for seriously 6 hours meant this was not a viable option for me. So after trying and trying, I decided to turn my settings back down so that at least I would keep inventory on death, and I made the respawn radius 1,000 blocks instead of 5,000, just to make it a little easier for me to get back to a place I would designate as home. Yes, I will be dying a lot, and I will be using the fact that I can respawn to gather materials. This world is very difficult, and it will break your spirit. There's gonna be that one person again in the comments who says something about the fact that dying means I'm not surviving, so how is this a survival challenge? Trust me, if you play this world, you'll understand. Now, since I really wanted this to be a cave challenge run, I told myself that the first cave I found would be my home, and that I would have to live inside that, and I would have to try to grow crops and do everything I can inside the cave to basically never have to leave this spot again. That was not really a miscalculation, but I kind of wish the first cave I found was a little bit better than this one. Now, the first step in me getting some homey touches was I wanted to add some flowing water. This water would flow down into the cave and allow me to do things like growing cattails or crops down underground, so I wouldn't have to come to the surface every time I was doing that. You can even plant berry bushes down here, as it turns out. It's kind of interesting and kind of fun. Now, here's where the problem of this cave being pretty deep down lies. It means that my temporal stability is not doing so well. In addition to that, because this is so deep down, I'm starting to see the deep variants of the enemies spawning instead of the normal kind, and I was getting two-shot by surface bowtorn. So the thought of having even stronger enemies spawning down here meant that I really needed to get some sort of wall up so that I could make a home out of this nightmare. I start trying to light up the cave to see what I'm working with, because if this is a big cave, then I'm going to need some sort of barriers to entry. Over here, it looks like the path goes up into a deeper section of cave. Over on this side, it looks like it drops down quite a bit and isn't super climbable. Over here is basically a dead end, and over here is a dead end as well, which is really nice. So I decided to place my last torch right here to try to minimize some spawns from behind, and I have to go back up to the surface to gather more materials so that I can light up the rest of this cave. I do manage to find my first set of ruins nearby, and these ruins have spelt seeds, which is really good. Not that I couldn't have found those in this region normally, but having spelt is really nice to have already. It means it's a little bit less to worry about in terms of crops. And shortly after that, I find my first source of clay, which is amazing because I'm gonna need this, and it will give me something to do during downtime of things growing or whatnot. I'm really struggling with food because it's so dark I can't find crops very easily to pick, and berries just aren't lasting that long. Back at home with crop seeds, berry bushes, and clay in hand, I turn this low spot into a spot for me to use berry bushes. Now, to save a bit of guesswork, I'll tell you that this does actually work, although I'm not even sure how, because I was under the impression that anything growing underground when you don't have underground farming enabled means that it wouldn't really grow. Maybe this doesn't apply to berry bushes, or maybe I don't really understand underground farming. I had once heard that if there's a direct access to the sky above crops, it doesn't really matter the depth, but I don't really know how this works. All I can tell you is that it does actually work for this, and that makes my life a lot easier. Or it will eventually. Because food is a problem, I really want to grow these crop seeds as soon as I can, but the main problem is I don't really have an area for a garden. I would need to try to work out the waterfall, which is currently the entrance to my house, so that it can be turned into a garden. And I don't really get around to that for a while, so for now I'm just going to put the plant seeds down, but I did get quite a few things. You can see everything I found here. This is good. This is a really good start for seeds, and I'm very optimistic about the future once I get some crops grown. And just the game reminding me that I'm still pretty new to all this, this is the first time I've ever seen this type of ruin. It looks like a mausoleum of some kind, or a crypt, which is really cool. I've never seen this before. But actually, more importantly, is the fact that there is a clay vessel right here for me to take, for free. I don't really care too much about the gears, even though I can trade, but I really like that I got this vessel early on. I need storage really bad at my house. Pay no attention to what I'm doing to this altar. Well, that was a fun bit of tomb degradation. Let's go home now and ignore the not deer that are stalking me in the wilderness. And we play a fun little game of tag with the monsters in my soon-to-be closet. Now we finally have a home. Yeah, you can just stay right over there. No, go back. There you go. And at the end of recording session 1, this is kind of what we have now. We have this section over here with berry bushes, some seeds on the ground. We've got our new clay vessel down. We're going to put most of these seeds in there. And we have some cattails that I've harvested, and clay, of course, that I got a little bit earlier. A good amount of the flax that you see over there is from me harvesting my nearby neighbors that I did not invite onto my property. We just leave their remains in a pile over there as flax that we will then turn into pillows and beds. Don't worry about it. The biggest annoyance of this world in terms of where I live is that this area is very mountainous, but like I said, part of my internal challenge was that I wanted to live in the very first cave that I found, which was this one. So, I kind of have to make do with this, and that means I need to start working on some sort of path. Or several paths, really. Harvesting resources in this area can also be pretty tedious because of the crazy terrain. Trees can just be growing on the side of a cliff, and because I have landslides enabled, that means I often get attacked by my own land when I'm near it. On the flip side though, that does mean that I am less likely to be attacked, and if I am getting attacked by something, I actually have some cover, so that's kind of nice. After finally getting some kind of path so that I could get around the mountain at the very least, I find this cave, and in this cave are some ruins, my first set of ruins ever, and I got really lucky with this one having a torch holder. I didn't really get lucky with too much else in these ruins, that was basically the best thing I found, but I did get back home and I did expand the dirt that is in my cave, which allowed me to plant more berry bushes. The current gameplay loop right now is me exploring and dying to something dumb, sorta like this, then respawning and having my torch and not being able to see more than a couple meters in front of me, and usually finding something new, like more grain, another resource of some kind, whatever you think. But because it's so hard to spot anything, I end up ultimately resorting to panning once again to get my basic copper supplies. I figure if I can get a copper pickaxe and hammer, that will at least allow me to advance into some sort of metal age where I can make shortcuts by mining if I need to. So here we are, once again, panning, but thankfully it's not 110 blocks like it was last time. But unlike last time, panning is actually somewhat peaceful, because down here is pretty safe now that I have it all lit up, and the stability drain is really not that bad. So I'm sorry to all of you viewers that enjoyed my B-movie impression, that won't be happening this time. After a long time, and I mean really long time, of trying to get wood and resources so that I could have multiple pit kilns, I'm finally ready to fire these 4 pit kilns at a time, that way I can have all of the clay items that I want and need. You might be thinking, why is it so bad to get these materials? Well, every time I go outside, I either die to a landslide, die to a fall or a pit that I didn't see because it's dark, die to something sneaking up behind me because it can spawn anywhere it wants, anytime it wants, or end up dying to any other natural cause like starvation because I can't find any resources. It's really hard to find crops or berry bushes when you can't see more than 2 meters in front of you. All the while this is happening, I've not yet had any temporal storms, but this is my first one. And over here we see that there's a Bowtorn trying to do something, shoot me or whatever, and I didn't notice it until way too late, and now I'm nearly dead. So I'm in my house, and I know they can spawn down here. I was always worried about that. I tried to, retake my home, fight for my territory, that type of stuff, when inevitably it just doesn't work out. Upon respawning, I'm trying to figure out where home is. I know that it should be where my tombstone is, so I get my bearings, I start running, and Upon respawning, I worship Spooky Dave, because he looks really, really cool in this endless night, not being able to see anything but the gears and his body. Looks really awesome, but also terrifying at the same time, and I don't really like running towards him, but hopefully he'll protect me. He didn't, I died 2 more times, but this time I spawned next to this trader cart. I'm thinking, finally, safety. I'll just sit right here and wait for the rest of the storm to end.
None can be allowed to see the light again.
Okay, I guess not. Several more deaths later, we are definitely not about to die as we're making our first copper tools. Finally. And with said copper tools, we get more copper so that we can make more tools so that we can get more copper. But as it turns out, there happens to be about 3 or 4 tin deposits in this cave that is in my house, so I'll be using that to my benefit later. First thing I do with my copper tools is build a series of tunnels that get me in and out of my base, that way I can stop climbing mountains and stop falling to my death. Then as my copper tool starts to run low, I go over to my surface deposit that I found on top of this mountain, so it's generated a little weird, to get more copper and make more tools, or maybe bronze tools this time. The tin in my base actually ends up being pretty poor, honestly. When I said 3 or 4 blocks, it really meant 3 or 4 blocks. I thought there would be more. My base is getting a little claustrophobic, I need more storage, so I make another clay vessel to store food because I know I'm going to want that eventually, but for now it can also store items, which is better than nothing. Even though I have berry bushes, food is always a concern because they take so long to grow for the very little nutrition that they give. So I've started diverting some of the water flow over to this little spot in my cave that I kind of had blocked off earlier, which will soon be my farm. In trying to get soil for the farm, I ended up getting shot by a bowtorn, which means I'm now running from the northwest over to my base. But that also puts me in a good position because I'll be passing by a skep to see if I have bees yet. That's a nope, and I'm kind of concerned that it's not going to populate in time or it won't populate at all, which means now I have to go find flowers at some point so that I can have bees, because I'd rather be getting bees from my own safety of my cave than out here in the eternal darkness. I think my farm's looking pretty nice, but now there's a shiver that spawned in my cave because it's not technically a room, and so the shiver's just gonna show up here whenever he wants, and it's kind of a problem. Now I don't have a tool and I'm not sure what to do. But I have an idea. I'm somehow hiding from the shiver, so I've quickly napped a stone spearhead and I'm gonna make a stone spear since my last one broke, and I should now be able to fight it off and get my farm back. No. But in respawning, I found surface marble deposits, which is kind of crazy because I've never seen marble ever in any of my worlds. But you know, something rock strata, I'm probably just not looking in the right place. For the farm, one of the things that I'm doing is building an air shaft straight up because I do not have underground farming on, so I'm not sure how all this works. But I think maybe if I have some sort of direct light towards the farm, it won't count as underground farming anymore. And it rains all the time, so I guess at least one block will get a little bit of love. Okay, editor's note, I don't know about you, but I really enjoyed seeing that clay vessel being made at super speed, so here's the anvil just for fun. Now, one thing to keep in mind about my base is that everything is lit up by torchlight at the moment, which isn't terrible, but from time to time, torches do burn out if I don't remember to reset them, and that gets a little annoying. It's something that I'm going to have to continue to deal with for quite a long time, since I don't really have enough metal to make lanterns, and because pretty much all of my natural resources are still on the surface, that means going outside, in the dark, where I can get shot. It's a lot of fun. Another fun thing about my base is the water is directly where the entrance is at, so there's this long column that they fall down and they get stuck in the water because the entrance is too small for them, or they can't swim down here. And this is kind of nice because then I get to farm some temporal gears or flax fiber and whatnot from these enemies, and that means I can stockpile a little bit of stuff as I'm trying to survive here. It's one fun thing about living in this cave. Most things are annoying, but this is one of the good ones. As I said before, one of the goals in this video is to be completely self-sufficient in the cave, and that's gonna mean getting wood, but trees don't grow in a cave, which means I need to find an area to grow them. And that's sort of what I designated this little area here to be for, but with a copper pickaxe, it breaks too much and it's not worth the resources to do it, so I'm just getting started with my first sapling here, but hopefully this will turn into a real tree farm at some point. After a lot of waiting, my skep is finally full, so I plant some flowers down here and I'm starting my own apiary underground. That way I never have to leave here for bees again. There are lots of beehives up on the surface that I'll probably end up harvesting, but for now I want good, easy access. But mining out an area means yet another torch is required. And after gathering some resources and other chores, my copper anvil is finally finished, and that means I can now start smithing soon and getting some more advanced things like eventually chests and doors. That way I can turn this cave into, well, less of a cave and more of a home. Also, as mentioned earlier, temporal stability is an issue, so sometimes I have to camp out here closer to the surface in this room that I mined out. The goal will be to connect this room to the rest of the cave so that it's all one cave. But technically speaking, since this is still underground, I consider this a cave and still within my rules. But once again, just as I start feeling comfortable in my world, a temporal storm hits and I feel a lot less comfortable than I was just a few seconds ago. And to top it all off, this drifter manipulates the fact that I have a block there to prevent that torch from going out and ends up getting me during the temporal storm. So now I'm running through the darkness once again towards my base in the middle of a temporal storm. This has happened twice now. By this point in the playthrough, it's July 5th, and you know what's kind of interesting about this world is it reminds me a lot of the Arctic. As you can imagine, with no sun and no moon, it doesn't really matter when I go outside, and it doesn't really matter when I sleep either. Also, consequently, for its own different reasons, this world is kind of difficult and relies on a lot of scavenging. In the Arctic, I was harvesting anything I could, getting bushmeat all the time. In this world, I have a hard time seeing animals at all, and instead I'm stuck on berries. But both are low nutrition forms of food that I'm kind of relying on until I get more established. And likewise with the Arctic challenge, I never slept, so even though I've been playing for a long time right now, it's actually not that far into the game. The major difference between these two challenges though, just as a retrospective, is that this world feels timeless, whereas the Arctic felt like I had extended seasons. So in the winter in the Arctic, it was brutal, and it was brutal for a long time. But the summer consequently lasted a long time as well. This world has no seasons, basically. I think with me growing crops down here, I might be able to grow them all year round, which would give me a huge advantage over the Arctic, but only time can tell, really. Because sleep isn't really necessary in this world, I made a chair that way I can sit and rest from time to time. I will make a bed and I will sleep in it as I need to, but because sleeping is something you can only do every so often, I wanted to have this chair first before I made anything else. That way I can just manually wait out the time. I'm not actually sure which one is better, but it feels like sitting when you're full and not hurt will last a lot longer than if you try to sleep the time away. I know that the chair has hidden mechanics for this specifically, because I used it in the Arctic world a lot. So if anybody actually knows the answer to whether or not sleeping is the same as sitting in a chair, please let me know in the comments, because I'd be curious to know. So it's about time I leave my house after doing some more chores. This time I'm looking for more tin so that I can make more tin bronze, because I really want to get into the bronze and eventually iron age. But the tin that I found in my base is not going to be enough for anything. I can't even make a tin bronze anvil with it, which means I'm kind of tech locked. I found this cave though, so I decided to go explore and see if I find anything interesting. As it turns out, yes, this cave was really important because I found a lantern. Which is also crazy and very similar to the Arctic challenge, because I found a lantern in that world too before I had any ability to make them. As we hit August, some of my crops are actually starting to grow finally, so I'm making a cellar for the first time, and this is 3 months into this world. But this is just going to be a tiny little thing, like a 3x1 with a door. That's it. Now if you're wondering what's happening with all this time and how it keeps disappearing, well, other than dying and trying to run back, which eats up a bunch of time, I'm always making subtle improvements to the base. Sometimes it's adding a location to grow cattails. Sometimes it's diverting the water flow so that I don't have to worry about a flooded base. Other times it's fixing problems like some creature up there caused the terrain to slide and blocked the water to my garden. So I have to check that and make sure the water is flowing properly and all that. But the base is getting a little crowded now, so what I really need to do is get some tech upgrades. I do have a tin bronze pickaxe, and I will find more tin soon, but for the time being, I really am getting a little claustrophobic in here with all the berry bushes and cattails, as you can see. After doing a little prospecting, I found a decent concentration of tin, so I just picked a random spot that I thought would work okay for a mine shaft and started digging straight down. I didn't see anything following me at the time, and I figured digging straight down would be best, that way I don't trigger the terrain instability and get crushed by the landslides like I usually do. Unfortunately, the game has a different idea and drops a drifter right down the mineshaft, and me being as squishy as I am, can't survive that. This is just one of those things I've come to expect from this world. And I swear, the vertical mineshaft method always works within your first 5 attempts. This is my first mineshaft straight down, and I got a reading for tin, and now I'm harvesting it. I don't know what it is about Vintage Story, but it's super satisfying to get ore like this. This playthrough just keeps getting more and more interesting, because here I am, and I'm pretty sure this room is the same room that's on the title screen for the ruins, with the gold shield and all that other stuff. Unfortunately for the title screen ruins, these ruins ended up outshining it a bit because I found the aged bed, which is something I never find in any of my playthroughs. This is actually my first time finding it for myself. So I'm pretty happy about this. So happy about this that now looking at the footage, I missed the torch holder that's directly next to me, and so I'm just gonna miss that for probably the entire playthrough. If you remember from when I was scouting my base, I have this upper section, and I've kept this pretty dark and put a little bit of a fenced-in area here to try to farm some deep enemies, hoping for temporal gears and stuff like that. And for the most part, it works, but I do get a little overconfident from time to time, and this shiver reminds me that it's dangerous down here. More time has passed, it is now October 2nd, and here is a current walkthrough of what my base looks like. Starting off on my right, I have my largest berry patch. I still have another one behind me. Down here is my garden with the water flowing. Yes, I have soybeans, you did see that correctly if you've been paying close attention. I'm growing spelt and I'm growing flax and onions down here mostly too. The water is flowing from up by my door, which I'm pretty happy of. I like this. I like this design a lot. And up here is my entrance. I've got all my stuff ground stored over here by my forge and everything. I haven't yet made a chest, but I've got all my berry bushes, and I try to grow my cattails where I can. It kind of ends up being a lot, but they look really cool when they're red like this. I've got more berry bushes, some of which are ready and ripe, and I do want to move over to the other patch. And down here where it's all dark and spooky is where that tree farm is. And so just to show you a little bit of progress on that, we have the oak sapling, we have a pine sapling, and we have a birch sapling that are all growing down here. Like I said before, the goal is to expand this in the future so that I can have more and more trees without having to go up to the top. And then I've got this area where you just saw the shiver climb over. You see I made the walls get a little bit taller, that way I don't have to worry about that. I've got my makeshift apiary down here for my bees, which I think this base is turning out pretty nice. I just need some real tools so that I can really dig for like an hour and clear out a large space for all this. Not yet though, because Dave has determined it is time for yet another temporal storm, so I threw up this wall real quick to prevent any roommates. But he spawned one right on me, but then he disappears somewhere, and I never see him again. With that little distraction taken care of, I head over to a location I marked on my map where I got a good iron reading, and I end up finding magnetite down inside this cave. It's very open and very dangerous, but this is iron, and this is a crucial step to me making my cave house actually work. And of course, the very first thing that I'm making is an iron pickaxe. I'm not playing around anymore. The iron pickaxe allows me to do so many more chores around my base to make huge improvements, like going and getting clay, turning that into fire clay, making an oven, etc. I won't be showing most of it for the purposes of this video, but know that I spent the next several hours just making small improvements to my base, relocating things, and going and gathering materials with tools that don't break after 3 uses. By this point though, it is now November, and that means that I start to freeze inside my own cave because it's not considered a room. This is now a top priority. Unfortunately for my garden, this room is not considered a room unless I block off the water source. And because I can't make new water sources because of wilderness survival settings, that means I have to think of something different. Well, those cattails have been annoying me for a while now, so what if I just hijack the water source and place more dirt in a small room so that I can grow the cattails? And to my surprise, this actually works quite well. I'm a bit surprised at how far cattails can actually grow from a water source like this. This also means that now I can take a watering can, grab that water, and use that to water my crops instead of having to rely on a constant flowing source of water. After some more base improvements, even though I'm a squishy clockmaker, I do like to come out and try to farm a temporal storm as much as I can. There's always a good chance of temporal gears, which I need to do special clockmaker things, and also to try to respawn not super far away from my base. Problem is that my little defensive fort I've made to try to fight during a temporal storm is not very big, and I inevitably get hit once or twice. And during a heavy storm, getting hit by a nightmare tier creature means I'm going to be running back to my base with a little blue light once again. And because basically everything in this world has been delayed by like 2 or 3 months, I'm freezing and mining for quartz because I need clear quartz so that I can make lanterns so that my base is lit up and not just torches all the time. It's getting really old now that it's like December just to have to replace torches constantly. So a lot of time has passed of me just gathering resources to make more lanterns and exploring what I can. I decide to check on my trees, and I run into a bell in my tree farm. I guess this is something I should have expected, but I really wasn't prepared for this. After delaying the inevitable, I go check on my tree farm and discover a saw blade locust, and this is a big no, because I don't have any armor still. I can't get leather from any creatures because I can't see any creatures, haven't seen any creatures for quite some time. It's cold and winter, so they're probably not spawning, and I just don't really have any gear for that right now. So I don't know what I'm going to do. It seems like for now the tree farm is a lost cause, and I will have to try to do something in the future to reclaim it. With a bell and a saw blade locust, I'm going to avoid that for quite some time. When I was out exploring looking for clay and stuff like that, I found high fertility soil, and I figured now is a good time, since I'm avoiding the locust, to plant this in my garden. It's gonna look a little weird, basically it goes everywhere the water used to go, and I'm just gonna replace the running water with me having to water it by hand with a watering can every so often. In my travels, I happened to get another temporal gear, so I made a tuning spear so that I could try to convert this saw blade locust. I didn't know until I tried that you can't convert a sawblade locust into your pet locust, and to some extent I get it, a sawblade locust is a very high damage creature, but I can't say I'm not disappointed by this. I really thought that the clockmaker would be able to get something like this since it's a pretty weak class otherwise. The only other thing it has going for it is the fact that you can use translocators a little bit cheaper than the other classes. So this means in order for me to be a true clockmaker and take advantage of the fact that I can have a little pet creature, I have to find a normal locust or a corrupt locust, not the sawblade variant. Which I'm just not sure that's going to happen because I've seen them one time when I was extremely low level and didn't mark them. So I have no idea how I'm going to get locusts, and by this point, it's already like January. Pay no attention to the fact that that thing just teleported and nearly killed me. Some more time has passed, and it is now about mid-March, so I need to connect this upstairs and downstairs area, and I'd like to make improvements by turning this area into a kitchen. I don't want to have to go up and down the ladder every time, or worry about my temporal stability when it gets low from being down there. I can come up here, I can rest, relax, get my stability back up, and then continue on my journeys. I'm not going to do anything crazy, but I don't know about you, I like to have stone countertops in my kitchens. So I'm going to take all this extra slate that I have with me and go ahead and turn that into a cobblestone countertop, which I think looks pretty nice. And I also decided I'm tired of being dirt poor. This is not a one oven household anymore. This is a 2-oven household. I invest too much time literally being the breadwinner of the household to not have this second oven. Now, believe it or not, we're actually very close to the end of this 1-year challenge that I have for this world. A lot of it doesn't look like it's changed too much. Sure, I've made improvements to the base, I've moved things around, I've added chests, but you'd think that in 1 year's time I would have made a little bit more progress, right? Well, most of this playthrough has been combating the fact that I am a squishy character in a very dangerous world. I die a lot, and that wastes a bunch of time, more than you would actually think. Plus, because it's actually just safer to heal back at home inside my house, and I have that aged bed, I do sleep a lot of time away. It's always dark, it doesn't matter when I sleep, as long as I can sleep when I'm damaged, I can heal up that way. And I'll just use the food and the passive healing that food gives in order to do that. So, quickly, it turns from December to April without even thinking about it. When you skip 9.5 hours every so often just to heal your character up, you really do get through the days really fast. But I'm gonna be real, I'm really not satisfied. I'm not happy with the progress that this class has made. I don't feel like a clockmaker, I just feel like a really squishy commoner right now. Even though there's not much time left, I need to check on my tree farm to make sure those are growing so that I can successfully say that I could be self-sustaining underground forever if I wanted to be. I come back here and realize I have another bell in here that is causing me problems. But he also brings a gift, a locust. I'll be honest, I didn't even know that they could spawn locusts. So now this means I need to try to get one. After all, I'm a clockmaker, right? And that's not a sawblade one, so I should be able to get him. In fact, he's a corrupt locust, which means he's actually the strongest one that I can get. I just gotta hope that I can get him converted. I'm not sure. Come on, don't hurt. Oh my god. No! That was my one shot. At this point, I just believe that I'm doing something wrong. So I start looking up in the handbook what a tuning spear can do, and it does say a chance to get a locust, but specifically on melee hits only. RNG is not usually on my side when it comes to things like this, but I guess I'm just gonna go back and see if I can deal with this bell. Let me look in there and... oh my god, there's another locust. I get him to crawl his way up to this door and over this wall where I'm gonna make my final stand. Either I get this locust, or I die, or he dies. There is no in between. Come on. Come on. Come on, running out of space. Yes! Instantly, I love him. I want him, he's mine, I'm keeping him. Get behind this door, we are staying together forever. I love you so much. And in keeping with my other videos, because he's green, he has to have a green food-like name. So I call him Basil, but I don't like the name Basil very much, so I switch it up and pronounce it as Basil, and I'm just so excited to have Basil as part of my team, even though there's only like 2 days left. He is precious and he is mine, and while I don't want to do this, I have to see how good he is in battle. I did look up online, basically they just get more health, but they do the same amount of damage, so I'm hoping he'll come over here and help me with this bell, or at least something. The bell summons another locust, but I know that he's no match for Basil, so I come back to my door and I close this up. I try to get away because I don't want him to get hurt, but he does some work. He already took care of that other locust, and it looks like he's attacking the bell, but I can't really tell from here what's happening. This drifter gets up here and tries to intervene, but he's stuck behind a door, his one weakness. So, as Basil just goes absolutely crazy down there, I get a message now saying that a temporal storm is imminent. All I can do is sit here and wait in a safety hole and hope that Basil doesn't get attacked and swarmed by a bunch of creatures. Especially because this is a medium storm, and I know that most things are going to be tier 2 or higher. Well, look at that. I don't know how he ended up there, but he is safe now in the ladder, so as long as he's safe, I'm happy. It's the last day of my last time being on this world, and as my last act, I want to make a watchtower of sorts, even if it's a little small, so that it stands as a nice little lit up area that is well guarded from the outside forces. So I'm going to add some glass here as a viewing platform and give it a roof as well. It's going to require a little bit more mining because I don't have all the stone that I need, but in the end, I think this will look okay. I also have all of this slate that I've gotten from all my mining in the general area, and that is one of the only stones you can make any sort of shingles with. So I decided that I'm going to top this tower with slate shingles. Part of the building is a little bit sketchy because there are bowtorn outside that really like to shoot me all the time, but I am determined to give this a roof so that it is properly insulated. And for some final touches to the tower, I go ahead and chisel all the glass so that we get a nice, smooth glass pane look. I also decided to climb up a mountain to get a nice view from the top of the tower. It looks small by comparison because I'm on top of a mountain, but honestly, I think it just goes to show how dark this world really is when you view things from up here. Now that the challenge is complete, why don't we take a look at the world with it being a little lit up with a bunch of lanterns, so we can see some of the challenge aspects that I didn't even know I was dealing with. Just next to my tower was actually some red clay that I never saw during the entire playthrough. I've been traveling hundreds of blocks to go get clay in a more dangerous location, when it turns out it spawned right here. And there was a tunnel that I dug to get to my house in an emergency because I couldn't figure out how to get through. Turns out it was just like right next to my other path that I have. It's just through some trees. Had I done a little bit of logging, I probably could have found this earlier. Taking a look at the area around my base, you'll see that, first of all, my base I didn't actually travel very far at all. My wall is barely outside my little tower that I built. Then over here, I've got a pit to trap rabbits and stuff, but that didn't really work out. If you travel inside my tower and go down some ladders, you'll find my little kitchen area, and all the way down here will take you down to the basement where my cave was. I've since cobbled all this in, but this was my original entrance over here with my apiary. Heading down the stairs and going to this left room will take you to my forge and my storage, and then this will take you over here to my tree farm, which I am growing about 6 or 7 trees or so. And yes, they do grow down here. Heading back into my forge area, going through the door, and then going through one of these doors on the left will take you into my berry farm. I don't know why there's a piece of glass there. Yes, the berries do grow down here. Some of them get a greenhouse effect. I'm not entirely sure why that's happening, but I imagine it has something to do with the mod, since there's no reason this should be getting a greenhouse. And if we go through this door, this takes us over to the farm, which I have to water occasionally, and I think that one piece of glass is what's causing the greenhouse effect, even though that's not how they work. So I'm not, again, sure how that's really working out, but hey, whatever. And just like that, that brings us to the end of 1 year in an Eternal Dark World challenge. This world was pretty fun, but also really challenging, so I'm really glad to finally be done with it. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Hope to see you next time. And if you want to see more content, feel free to keep an eye out because I'm streaming on both YouTube and Twitch 3 times a week. Take care, everyone.